The only thing that kind of gives you a range here, which is this 50% to 48.5%, is that if you look at the recent pullbacks, like for instance, here, right, you had a sideways consolidation and you never got back to that level, right? So, and in other situations, if you go back on charts, you kind of have the same situation. I'm looking back here. So here, right? So you had this pivot high breakout right here. You kind of kissed it there, but you didn't quite hit it. And then you consolidated before the next big move up in dominance. Here, though, you could argue, I mean, again, does this, I don't know, it's tricky. It's one of those things where as a technician, I know that it could do either one. And so as if you're someone that's interested in buying Bitcoin, you want to start to inch in at this level, and then you always leave room to add if it goes lower, if the dominance comes lower into that level. But I think the one thing I will say is that I would be very surprised if dominance broke back below the previous consolidation. That would be very unusual from a chart perspective, as well as from a Bitcoin historic perspective.
Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, Gareth Soloway and Ben Cowen take us through their analysis and prediction for Bitcoin and crypto, as well as the macro picture, and where they think the market will go in the next months. So without further ado, let's get started with the video.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am right now, is that, just briefly overviewing the Ripple scenario is that, okay, so Ripple essentially won. I think there's some caveats there that people were glossing over, that it wasn't a full win. There was still some situations where the judge said, well, that would be a security if you're selling directly to institutions and so forth. But the key is that and I've said this from the very start of this decision, is the SEC is not going to just lay down and die, right? They're not going to be like, oh, well, we lost, too bad. They're going to appeal, and that appeal process is probably going to take 1 to 2 years. And so you have a scenario now where, as much as we wanted this finality where it's like, okay, alts are not securities, we're now going to have to wait 1 to 2 years to get that finality, which means that institutions are not going to be like heavily investing in these things, right? So it brings us back to that idea that, okay, well, they probably, if we get a spot ETF, they probably would start to heavily invest in Bitcoin, which goes with the whole dominance side of things as well. So I think that's just something that investors, they get so excited, and I don't blame them. I mean, that move on Ripple was incredible. Although, to be honest, I thought it would go more, maybe because it wasn't a full win and there's the appeal process. But for me, it's still this kind of pseudo gray now, with maybe a little bit more clarity, but not enough to really release the Kraken, as they say, So, and this brings up a really good point, right? So I remember a couple of weeks ago talking to you about how, even though I believed that Bitcoin dominance was ultimately going to head higher, there was opportunities for kind of a snapback on some of the altcoins. And so for instance, I had members at Verified Investing Crypto, we were long Cardano with this beautiful little wedge. And then as it popped into this area, that's where we started to unload, right? So it's the swing trade ability to kind of just be in and be out and understand the bigger macro picture. But you can see what's happened. I mean, Cardano's come right back in. Now, interestingly enough, what this does for me, at least, is this potentially brings up a opportunity here. And I'm just looking for some chart things here. So for me, this now becomes, let me do it again here. This becomes support right here, right? So you have this trend line and this trend line, which were this was former resistance. When resistance breaks, it now becomes support. And so for me, and this is, again, strictly on a swing trade basis, I would potentially be interested in unloading or buying Cardano again back at around 29 cents, give or take. And the same thing for Matic, right? I mean, these things were quick poppers. Now it's retracing. So now you have some opportunities on the way back down where you can play. But again, I think it's important to just caveat this for everyone watching, that we're not at least I'm not talking about long-term holds. These are make 10%, 15%, be out of the type of trading opportunities. And I do want to just point out too, is that just with Bitcoin dominance going up, again, just to reiterate, it doesn't necessarily guarantee Bitcoin's going to go up from here, right? So Bitcoin could drop 20%, alts could drop 40%, right? And then dominance still goes up in that situation. So just to be aware, and the only reason I bring this up too is if I just flip to my chart, is that there's been some, even though we're still technically stuck in a sideways consolidation, which is usually bullish for Bitcoin, I'm struggling with some factors here, right? So we keep on making these attempts and making even slightly higher highs, and then something's causing Bitcoin to kind of reverse super quickly. Like this candle right here technically fits a topping tail, and topping tail in technical analysis is a bearish indicator. Here we had this beautiful close. It was like the first close or the highest close we've seen. And the next day, Bitcoin fell right back down, negating that entire move up, which again is not confidence building. It's not a good signal for Bitcoin. And then we've just gone sideways. And you can see, actually, I put in a channel now. There's a pretty clear sideways upsloping channel that's kind of keeping price in this range. So I think just from my perspective is that you have to admit that this sideways chop after a move up is usually bullish, but it's not been an easy success breakout situation for Bitcoin. And I do wonder at some point if this thing can't break out, path of least resistance is to the downside.
In a significant move last month, Valkyrie made a pivotal change to its Bitcoin fund prospectus, opting to shift its exchange to NASDAQ. This strategic decision aligns Valkyrie with BlackRock, a prominent player in the financial market, amplifying its influence in the digital currency landscape. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has taken an active role in evaluating numerous new Bitcoin ETF applications, signifying a remarkable moment in the history of digital currencies. The entrance of major firms such as BlackRock, VanEck, Invesco, Galaxy Digital, Fidelity, and WisdomTree into the race for ETF approval positions. Bitcoin at the precipice of widespread adoption and potential mainstream recognition. With the SEC's recognition of Valkyrie's Bitcoin ETF, the floodgates seem to have opened wide for Bitcoin ETFs, creating an optimistic ripple effect throughout the crypto industry. The potential approval of a spot ETF holds several bullish implications for Bitcoin. A spot ETF would acquire and securely hold actual Bitcoin, with its valuation based on the current market price of Bitcoin, known as the spot price. If a regulatory authority like the SEC endorses a Bitcoin spot ETF, it would convey a powerful message of legitimacy and acceptance for this cryptocurrency. Furthermore, the approval is likely to attract a fresh infusion of capital into the Bitcoin market, further bolstering its prospects.
And I was curious your shorter term views on this, Ben.
Yeah, so going into this year, my general view is that we'll spend the year between 12 and 35K. The longer we go into this, though, I think the harder it becomes to justify, because normally in the pre-halving year, right, what normally happens is we spend half the year going up and half the year going down. And the last two times, in fact, we had a pre-halving year of 2011 and 2019. And in both of those cases, like 5 of the first 6 months were green, 2011 and 2019. And in those were both pre-halving years. And then 5 of the last 6 months were red in those years. So I think that, and again, normally Bitcoin in the pre-halving year, normally it finds some type of significant top about halfway through, right? Like, again, if you just sort of overlay 2015, you can see there was a top here. Just look at it with respect to 2023, right? Like the same top before ultimately a double bottom. In 2019, we saw this top out in June. And in 2011, it topped out in June as well. So June, July tends to be a significant path for Bitcoin to find a local top in the pre-halving year. And, one of the things I keep thinking too with regard to this is how, if Bitcoin USD goes down and the dominance goes up, that means the altcoins get wrecked more. Or if Bitcoin rallies, I think it just leaves the altcoin market behind, right? So either way, it just seems like the dominance is going to go higher. If you look at, there's this indicator I really like to look at. It's called the altcoin season index. And this is like a 30-day moving average. Like if I take a 30-day moving average off it, it's a little bit noisier, but if you apply moving average to it, you can kind of see that there's been 3 times in history. So we just hit like around that 5 or 6 level. There's been 3 times in history where we've gone to that level, right? So December 2020, September of 2018, and October of 2017, November of 2017. So 3 times previously. Now, 2 of those times when we came out of Bitcoin season, it was the altcoin market exploded, right? 2 of those times. But here's the thing, like there's one time where we came out of that and then altcoins got wrecked, and that was in 2018. And I look for confluence in other indicators. So like what's similar today with 2020, 2017, and 2018. Like, what does today most closely match, right, between those three outcomes? And if you look at things like the social risk, which we talked about, right, 2017, higher lows, right? 2020, higher lows. 2018 was lower lows, right? So the one time where altcoins got wrecks coming out of Bitcoin season, it was when we were putting in lower lows, which is actually what's going on today, right? So I still, yeah, as much as I would love to just join in on the fun, right, and just say, put the moon goggles on and just say, say that they're gonna go up. It's just like I can't get past this. Like, who's the marginal buyer if retail is still capitulating out of the altcoin market? And then that's ultimately what I look at. And then you also look at total 3, the altcoin market, and you look at similarities between today and 2020. I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, in 2020, total 3 was trending up above the 20-week SMA. Today, it's still getting rejected by it. 2017, it was above it. 2018, it was getting rejected by it. So until the market definitively proves the dominance thesis wrong, I still think the altcoins are going to be struggling for a while.
So, what's your price prediction for Bitcoin at the end of 2023? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.